We have breaking news. Iran attacked a United States ship, but it appears they hit the wrong one. A very big mistake with massive consequences.
100 hours over the northern Arabian Sea. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow throat of steel and salt, barely 21 nautical miles across at its tightest choke point. Two U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke destroyers, US Truxtun and US Mason, are already inside it, escorting two flagged commercial tankers that cannot afford to stop. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Iranian coastal batteries are tracking them. The first launch is already in motion, and a 12-minute intercept window is closing fast before the first wave of missiles reaches the shipping lane. The destroyers are not alone, but they are exposed in a way that changes everything. Above them, FA-18 Super Hornets orbit in combat air patrol, fuel already budgeted in minutes, not hours. Below them, the sea is a corridor of geometry and risk. Every radar pulse bouncing off the water is being measured, classified, and prioritized. And at this exact moment, Iranian launch units begin feeding targeting data into a coordinated saturation strike. The invisible clock is now visible in everything. 12 minutes to first impact. What follows is not a battle in the traditional sense. It is a systems collision. Because inside the U.S. formation, every layer of defense has to work at once, or nothing works at all. The first detection comes from AN Spy-1D ASA radar aboard US Mason. A low-altitude track appears at the edge of the radar horizon, fast, sea-skimming, and already masked by clutter. It is identified as a Noor-class anti-ship cruise missile derivative, launched from a coastal battery near Bandar Abbas. Seconds later, more contacts bloom across the screen. Not one, not two. A coordinated salvo designed to saturate reaction time. Not just defenses, the system response is immediate, but calculated. SM-2 interceptors begin spinning up in vertical launch cells. But even here, there is friction, magazine discipline. Every missile fired is a future gap in coverage. The commander is not just fighting incoming fire, he is fighting depletion. And then the second layer activates. Combat air patrol shifts from passive overwatch to active missile denial. FA-18s begin climbing and repositioning, preparing to intercept leakers with AIM 9X Sidewinders. The logic is simple, but brutal. Preserve ship, launched interceptors for the highest threat tracks. Let the fighters absorb the mid-tier chaos. But this is where the geometry becomes dangerous. Because the airspace above the strait is now a stacked battlespace. SM-2 intercept arcs rising from the ships, fighter engagement corridors cutting across them, and inbound missiles threading through both. Deconfliction is no longer procedural. It is mathematical under pressure. And the first SM-2 launches break silence. Two missiles leave US Truxtun in near-perfect vertical symmetry, climbing like accelerated gravity inversions. Their job is not to chase targets directly. It is to intercept predicted intercept points. Think of it like firing at where a bullet will be, not where it is. Within seconds, the first Iranian missile disappears from radar. But the strike is not breaking, because now the second wave arrives. Shahed 136 drones enter the picture at lower altitude, slower, almost primitive in comparison, but that is the trap. They are not designed to penetrate alone. They are designed to dilute attention, to force radar operators to spin cognitive cycles on low-value targets, while higher-speed missiles close distance under clutter. And this is where ESSM, evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, become the middle layer of survival. US Mason launches a ripple salvo. 4 ESSMs climb, and then angle downward, intercepting drone tracks at mid-range. The sky is now layered with intersecting trajectories, some rising, some falling, all converging on invisible points where metal will cease to exist. But even that is not enough, because 3 cruise missiles slip through the outer intercept envelope. This is the moment the system was designed for. Phalanx CIWS activates. A 20 mm Gatling gun, radar-directed, autonomous in its final seconds of decision-making. It doesn't think in strategic terms. It thinks in milliseconds. One of the incoming missiles crosses the final engagement corridor, and the system responds with a stream of tungsten. The missile disintegrates in a flash of fragmentation and fuel ignition over open water. But 2 more continue inbound. And now the problem shifts. Because this is no longer a pure missile defense problem. It is a timing problem. The ships are moving. The tankers are moving. The intercept geometry is constantly changing. Every second alters the firing solution of both sides. And then comes the first critical reframing. This is where most people misunderstand naval air defense. They imagine it as a wall. It is not a wall. It is a probability field, constantly recalculated, constantly thinning and thickening depending on fuel, radar horizon, and missile availability. Every interception is a trade. Every trade has a cost. And saturation attacks are not about penetration. They are about forcing the system to misallocate itself. At this exact moment, US Mason is making allocation decisions under fire. SM-2s for high-speed cruise missiles, ESSMs for mid-tier drones, Phalanx reserved for terminal leakers, and fighters absorbing anything that can be pulled outside the ship's threat envelope. But the next layer of complexity arrives from an unexpected axis. 6 ERG fast attack boats emerge from a coastal cove near Keshem Island. Small, fast, visually low signature. They are not part of the missile strike. They are the second act. Their goal is simple: close distance under electronic distraction, and convert chaos into boarding range or short-range missile engagement. They are carrying MESA-2 manpads. And suddenly the battlefield is no longer just horizontal. It is vertical, layered from sea surface to low atmosphere. Above the waterline, drones and cruise missiles. On the waterline, fast boats. Above that, fighter patrols. And above all of it, radar systems trying to maintain coherence in a collapsing time window. The clock now reads under 6 minutes to first ship level threat convergence. FA-18s are redirected. But here is the hidden friction. Every aircraft engagement costs fuel, and every missile fired from fighters is one less defensive layer later. The system is now managing exhaustion as much as threat. And this is where deconfliction becomes critical. An SM-2 launch trajectory intersects a potential fighter corridor. The system must ensure that a friendly aircraft is not inside a predicted missile path. For a few seconds, the entire engagement rhythm slows, not because of enemy action, but because of friendly geometry constraints. That pause is lethal in any other context, but here, it is absorbed. Because the system is built for layered redundancy. And then, the second major spike hits. A cruise missile breaks through ESSM coverage and enters terminal phase. Its altitude drops to just above wave tops, barely visible to radar, riding the curvature of the sea. At this range, reaction time is measured in seconds, not minutes. Phalanx engages again. The sound is not heard on the bridge. It is felt through vibration and systems feedback. Another missile disintegrates, but debris impacts the water near the convoy, sending shockwaves across the surface. The tanker formation does not break, but it is now inside the engagement envelope, whether it wants to be or not. And this is the turning point most analysts miss, because the missile exchange is not the decisive factor anymore. The decisive factor is now the fast boats. They are moving toward a coastal staging point at Keshem Island's southern edge, preparing to rearm with manpads under cover of terrain and radar clutter. If they reach it intact, the next wave will not be cruise missiles alone. It will be layered short-range ambushes targeting helicopters and low-flying aircraft. The engagement is no longer offshore defense. It is preemption. This is where the second half of the operation activates. Seed elements are cleared for action. E-18G Growlers enter the battlespace. Their ALK-249 jamming systems begin sweeping coastal radar frequencies, effectively blinding detection nodes along the Iranian shoreline. Radar screens on the opposing side begin to lose coherence. Contacts flicker, disappear, reappear in false positions. At the same time, targeting shifts to airborne suppression. Without radar guidance, the fast boats lose coordination advantage. But they are still moving. Now Apache attack helicopters enter the picture from a forward-deployed Army aviation element. And this is where platform selection becomes critical. Because Apaches are not designed for naval warfare, in theory, but in practice, their low-altitude stability, targeting sensors, and ability to hover outside manpads' optimal engagement envelopes make them ideal for precision boat interdiction. The first Apache locks a fast attack boat cluster near shallow water. Hellfire missiles launch in staggered intervals. One impact disables propulsion. Another ignites fuel storage. The water becomes both shield and amplifier of destruction, but the remaining boats respond exactly as expected. They break formation and attempt to hug terrain near coastal inlets, trying to reduce aerial exposure. And then, a second unexpected layer appears. A 10 Thunderbolt II enters the theater at low altitude. Its GAU-8 Avenger cannon is not designed for maritime targets in doctrine, but against lightly armored, stationary, or slow-moving coastal threats, it becomes brutally effective. Dug in optical AA positions near the shoreline are suppressed in a single pass. The sound of the cannon rolling across the water like a mechanical judgment. Now the battlespace collapses inward. Fast boats are either disabled or dispersing. Coastal radar is degraded. Missile saturation has failed to achieve decisive penetration. But the system is not static. It is still consuming resources at scale. And now comes the irreversible transition. The engagement shifts from defense to cleanup. Apaches advance again, this time under reduced manpads threat due to prior suppression. The remaining Urgic boats attempt last-ditch engagement with shoulder-fired systems. But the CMWs and ALC 144 infrared countermeasures on the helicopters begin cycling flares and signature distortion patterns. A manpad's launch occurs at point-blank range. The missile locks, then loses track in its final seconds due to countermeasure bloom and thermal confusion. It detonates harmlessly over water. That moment defines the end of escalation potential. Because once manpads fail at close range, the entire layered ambush doctrine collapses. The remaining fast boats retreat into protected coastal inlets, no longer a tactical threat to the convoy. The tankers continue forward under escort, their path still dangerous, but now statistically stabilized. And this is the final reframing. This was never a single strike event. It was a systems endurance test. Missile magazines versus saturation doctrine, radar coherence versus electronic disruption, and platform specialization versus asymmetric layering. Every weapon system did not just perform a function. It occupied a role in a time-based chain. Break any link early, and the convoy would have been overwhelmed. But once layered defenses stabilized the geometry, the attack lost its exponential structure and became linear. And linear attacks can be absorbed. The Strait of Hormuz remains open for that convoy, not because the threat was eliminated, but because its timing advantage was destroyed. In modern naval warfare, that is the true victory condition, not annihilation, but delay beyond effectiveness. And as the last Apaches turn back toward staging altitude, the radar picture settles. Not clean, but controlled. And in this kind of battle space, control is the only metric that matters. If you want more tactical breakdowns like this, subscribe now.